Good afternoon. My name is Paul Cohen, the town manager here in the town of Chelmsford, and welcome to our strategic planning forum. I want to first off thank you for taking time on a busy day, busy time of the year, to provide your input and participation in the town strategic planning process. We're joined today by members of the strategic planning committee, and we really are seeking your assistance in helping the town establish a vision for the next 5 years and basically make priorities during a very challenging time. We've got a number of plans in our great community. We're very fortunate. We've got a school facilities plan and a school strategic plan. We've got the library has a strategic plan. In fact, they're going to be updating there soon, so I'll make an early pitch on that. I know our library director, Leslie Kimball's in the back of the room. We're working on our open space plan, our affordable housing plan. So, and really, the purpose of the strategic plan, as approved by town meeting and really advanced by the select board, is we need a town-wide strategic plan, recognizing that there are limited resources and lofty goals and things that we want to preserve as a community, and then things we want to add to our community. We're very fortunate as a committee. We've been brought on board our consultants, Barry Dunn, and Charlene is going to take over the presentation this morning and guide us through this next 90-minute process. So again, thank you for your time and participation, and we look forward to your input not only today but in the months ahead as we chart a course forward. So thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. How are you all doing today?
Good.
Awesome, good to hear. So my name is Charlene Kirigosi. I'll do some more brief introductions here alongside my colleague, Karen. Before we do that, we always want to just give you all a quick rundown of our agenda and what to expect for today. So for our agenda, we'll go ahead and do some more in-depth introduction, introducing not only ourselves, but also the rest of our team. Then we'll give you an overview of strategic planning, if you're not necessarily kind of aware of what that is and how that could help the town. Then we'll talk through a community profile, and I'll explain what that is, and it's really looking to give you all some more context as far as where the town currently is. And then from there, we'll give you all some initial feedback that we're hearing from the community, just so that you can hear what others are saying so far. Then we'll have small group discussions, so this is a highly fast-paced, kind of meeting, so we'll have you all kind of, really getting to know each other and discussing amongst yourselves. And then we'll talk about next steps, right? I'm sure you all are wondering, now that we're here, provided our feedback, what's to come, and we'll make sure that you all meet with that as well. As far as introductions, more formally, Charlene Kirigosi, I'm a manager with the firm Barry Dunn. We are a national consulting firm, and we assist clients like you all, so towns, cities, and counties across the United States kind of go through their strategic planning journey. Most recently, assisted the town of Holliston actually in their strategic plan, which they adopted earlier this year, and they're now in the process of implementing that. My educational background is in public administration. I've earned my master's in public administration from Clark University in Worcester, and now I'm currently living in Melrose. With that, Karen.
Hello everybody, I'm Karen Witchard, a consultant with Barry Dunn. Thank you for being here today, and thank you in advance for the time that you're going to spend with us and your insights. Like Charlene, I do strategic planning work all over the country. Just finished a plan for Foley, Alabama. Charlene and I are partnering on a plan for Onslow County, North Carolina, and wrapping up in St. Johns County, Florida. So we love doing this work. We love the community engagement. A little bit about me: before joining Barry Dunn, I spent 20 years in local government administration in the Charlotte region of North Carolina. My last role was as an assistant county manager and deep experience in budget and finance and local government. I also hold an MPA. Mine is from UNC Charlotte, and my undergraduate is from UNC Chapel Hill. So thank you, and looking forward to working with you all today.
Thanks, Karen. And the rest of our team here, they're not here with us, but I just wanted to speak briefly about them. Seth Hedstrom, he's our project principal based out of our Portland main office. So he's just assisting to make sure that we have all the resources we need in this project. Michelle Kennedy is based out of Bend, Oregon, and she is our engagement manager, helping to oversee the project. John Sullivan was here with us actually yesterday. He's in Beverly, but he's our research analyst assisting with gathering all the data that we are going to be presenting here today. So now, before we kind of start getting deeper in the presentation, we always like to share guidelines for effective participation. As I mentioned earlier, there will be some discussion. So we always want to put this out here to make sure that we're all being respectful of each other's viewpoints really just play nice with each other, right? As you're speaking from your own perspectives, using I statements. When you all are reporting out from your small groups, using we statements are always advised. And then asking questions, right? There's a lot of information that will be thrown at you this afternoon, so definitely raise your hand and ask questions. And lastly, staying focused on the discussion at hand. We don't have all day here, right? So we want to make sure that we're really capturing your feedback on the topics that really matter. So now before we get into our community profile, we wanted to share just a little bit more information about strategic planning and what that is. If this is new to you, this is really just to help set context as to what we're doing here today. So the strategic plan is really looking to define the what, right? So what is the town of Chelmsford want to be 5 years from now? What's your vision? You know, why do you exist? It's identifying the what, and then the actual how the town will carry that out will come in an implementation plan that will assist staff in developing. Ultimately, the strategic plan is intended to also be a living document, right? So we don't want to do all this work for this plan to sit on the shelf. So we'll want to make sure that we're also identifying performance measures that the town will constantly be tracking feedback and tracking progress and reporting out to you all as a community, right? Because ultimately, it's also a really great tool for transparency. So why is it important? Strategic plan helps you all plan for the future, right? So there's a lot of competing needs in local government always, and we want to make sure that we are identifying what those priorities are. So it's helping plan for the future, but also helping to set clear goals and priorities that you will be focusing on in the next 5 years. But most importantly, it's maintaining focus on what's important to you all, the community. So that's why we're here, requesting your feedback to make sure that that's included in the planning process. So a little bit more about how we develop the plan. So there's a lot of stakeholders, and everyone has a role to play, including you. So you as a community, you'll be providing us information that will be used as an input to the plan development process. So through the interviews, through the forums, that's how we're gathering our feedback. And then once the plan is actually developed, we'll also be providing that to you in draft format to review. We want to make sure that we got it right and we're still involving you throughout the process. We also have a strategic planning steering committee, which there are a few members here with us this afternoon. Their role is to really help develop the mission, vision, and core values, and then also developing the priorities. Once that's developed with town staff, we'll be developing the goal statements as well as the objectives. And from there, as I mentioned, performance measures are very important to make sure that this is ultimately going to be a living document. So how does this all kind of fit together? This little house graphic is a great way to visualize this. So your vision statement is at the top. That's, again, your aspirational statement. 5 years from now, what does Chelmsford want to look and feel like, right? And then your mission statement sits right below that, and that's looking to define, why do you exist, right? What's your reason for being? And then under that, you'll typically have around 4 to 6 priorities, and those are the more broad areas that you're focusing on, whether it's public safety, or governance, or organizational excellence, for example. And then under those priorities, you would have objectives, right? Those are more specific actions that you are doing to move closer to achieving those priorities. And underpinning all of this is core values. So your core values are essentially core behaviors that you all can expect from town staff as it relates to how they're conducting business and also interacting with you all as the community. Any questions so far? All right. So now we gather a lot of information to arrive at this process, right? So we employ various sources to inform our process, and that's really to make sure that we're not just listening to one voice, we're not just using one medium or one format to gather information. So some of the tools that we use are community feedback through these forums like today. We had 2 more earlier this week. We also have select interviews with stakeholders. We have a tool called Meeting in the Box. That's a really great tool if you're interested. It's actually on our social pinpoint site. If you have a book club or something like that, it's really a useful way to gather feedback and provide that feedback back to us for people who may not have time to be here with us in these forums. And then I mentioned that social pinpoint site. That's a community engagement tool that we've used. We found a lot of success with this, especially after COVID, as people are more comfortable now providing feedback online. So we have a survey on the site. We also have something called an ID as well, where you can provide your thoughts based on different categories. And of course, also looking at the raw data, right? So not just what people are saying, but looking at trends in terms of where the town is going as far as population, other demographics, and so forth, as well as looking at other town plans and budget information. So we're gonna get into what we call an environmental scan shortly before that, but I wanted to just describe what that is. It's almost like a SWOT analysis, right? If you think about the strengths, weakness, opportunities for improvement analysis, that's really what this looks to do. And the point of this is to make sure that we're setting context for the strategic plan, right? I always say it's hard to kind of know where you're going if you don't really understand where you are right now. So it's intended to provide everyone here in this room a shared understanding of where the town is, but also helping to identify potential opportunities, challenges, and trends that we're seeing. Before that though, I'd like to hear from you all, just hearing a little bit more about which words best describe the town. Whether you've been here your whole life or whether you've recently moved here, curious to hear this, and you can just popcorn style, if you want to shout it out or raise your hand. We'll make sure to capture that on this chart paper. Who's our brave soul?
Community.
Community.
Traffic. Volunteerism.
Safe.
Education.
Yeah, we see a lot of that in the data that we've gathered so far, so we'll talk a little more about that too.
Sports.
Sports, okay.
Just the community within education of the school.
So the school system?
Yeah, school system.
You all get to see how bad my handwriting is.
I'm gonna break the rules because this is more than one word. Blending old and new.
Oh, tell me a little bit more about that.
I feel like there is a definite kind of cultural vibe in our community where there's a mix of folks and mindsets that are very focused on, you know, the legacy of what our town is and can be and should be based on its kind of rich past and the vibe of, you know, what, there's a reverence for our history. And there are a lot of new folks living in Chelmsford and wanting to see, you know, what sorts of opportunities there are here, both jobs, what our schools are so that, you know, kids can be raised here, the kinds of, you know, businesses and restaurants there are to enjoy, things like Chelmsford Center for the Arts. And I think it's, I'm talking about this in a very positive light, not necessarily in like a negative tug of war, but more just like a positive aspect of the town is the blend of both.
Like preserving your character, but also looking to expand.
Grow and change, yeah.
Okay.
Engaging and vibrant open space.
You're cheating there. So engaging.
Engaging in vibrant open space.
Vibrant. Okay. Anything else?
I would say affordability.
Okay.
Why?
All right, so let's get into the data. Oh, was there one more? Sorry.
Yeah, I'd say anti-growth.
Anti-growth, okay. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Just an overwhelming, we don't want any more housing, we don't want any more people moving into town. We don't want any industries that haven't already been there. I don't know. Maybe I spent too much time on the planning board, but it's just the overwhelming, you know, when I think about the town, that's what I think about.
So the sentiment of being anti-growth.
Yeah.
So there's one more here now. Let's go ahead. Oh, you can go.
Oh, okay. Commutability. Yes. All roads lead to Chelmsford Center.
Absolutely. And Scott's affordability, I would make as non-affordability. unaffordability.
Yeah, the different perspectives, so yeah, yeah.
Another way to put it would be bang for buck. You get a lot for a little less money.
But not everyone feels that way.
Yeah. Seriously.
More than you're going
You're gonna see that come up in the back of the skin.
One more here.
Yes, I think the town is, well, first of all, it's maturing and it's aging. Some raw statistics here, out of 36,000 residents, we have over 10,000 over the age of 60, and it's growing. Probably more so than some other communities, so we have to plan for that.
So that's actually a great segue to the data that we're going to be presenting, because that's really what it shows, right?
Well, it's aging architecture too,
And so the facilities and the infrastructure.
aging infrastructure.
Yeah, and as we get it through this community profile, what I will kind of encourage you all to do is, as you're thinking about these things, to think about how, as we're planning for the future, right, how do these things correlate, right? If you have an aging population, how do we make sure that we're starting to plan for that aging population as far as services that they may need to age in place, right, from retirement facilities and so forth. So the first slide here, this is more about your community as far as population, but also looking at some metrics as it relates to income. We're comparing Middlesex as a county overall to the town. I know it's kind of a hard comparison because there are different characters within the county. It is a big county. But just for reference here, what we do see is just that sustained growth from 2010 to 2020. So about 7% growth in both the county and the town. So that does show that your town is expanding overall. And also as the county continues to grow, right, that may also potentially spill into the town of Chelmsford. So how do we prepare for, potentially a more growing community, especially as we hear these sentiments of anti-growth, right? As far as income, your median household income is a little higher than the county overall. This does show that, you definitely have, you're a more affluent community than the county overall. In terms of home value, while you do have a robust real estate market, you do trail a little bit behind of the county, but it does show that, homes are a little bit more affordable here as it compares to the county. And then high school graduates are higher, that's about 95%. So this is a little bit higher than the county, definitely showing that you all are a well-educated community. Residents in poverty, that's almost half of the county. That's something to boast about, right? If we're looking to, think about social economic status. And I know that some of this data may also be a little outdated, given that there's been a lot of changes from 2020 as far as the inflation overall. When we look at cost of living indicators, we try to show data as far as gross mortgage, gross rent, owner-occupied housing units, as well as household with broadband internet access, right? So that internet access part is really good as far as making sure that people have access to, be able to apply for jobs or so forth. These are really good cost of living indicators. What we do see kind of across the board is that your numbers are slightly lower than the county's numbers. I heard someone say affordable, so that's maybe where that comes from, right? If you were to compare the town to the county overall. And race and ethnicity, so from 2010 to 2020, this is just Chelmsford's data. What we do see is that in 2010, predominantly white, about 87%, but in 2020, we do see that Chelmsford is becoming a little bit more diverse, right? So as we're thinking about the future, how do we plan for, community services or plan for, to make sure the schools can support a more growing and more diverse community? So notably, the Asian population, went from 8% to 11%, and about a 2% growth in the Hispanic population. Now with age, someone mentioned that there is a large growing population of people who are 60 and over. That's what this data suggests as well, right? So looking at people 65 or older, that did grow from 2010 to 2020, but then the numbers decreased from the ages of 35 to 64, right? As we're planning again for the future, this is something to think about, right? How do we make sure that we are attracting and retaining this population, because they usually tend to be, very active in the workforce as well.
Question.
Yes.
Can you break down the group that's 35 to 64? That's a pretty big bucket.
Yeah, we get that a lot oftentimes. So this is how the census kind of categorize that, but we can look to see if there's more details over that.
Basically that's workforce.
But then you see that you're 20 to 34, that number did increase.
Well, you don't get to really see the group that's, say, 55 to 64. What's the
What's
group
coming?
what's the group that's gonna slide over?
Right. We'll make a note of that, see if we can find some more data on that as well. So now looking at the employment and the economy, this just looks to see, industry, employment by industry within the town residents. So 23% of your residents are employed within the educational services, healthcare, and social assistance, right? So all those industries that really contribute to overall well-being. Professional, scientific, and management, about 20%, that's the second largest industry. Again, really emphasizing the fact that the town does attract, professionals. And then manufacturing is about 15%. And looking at your unemployment rates, you are kind of closest to the national average. So, so the national average as well as the county's average as well. So you're at 3.5%, as far as your unemployment rate, and the county's numbers is at 3.4%. This is from the 2020 American Community Survey. So we share the academic achievement information just because oftentimes this is something that attracts families to a community, right? So looking at how you all compare to other school districts within the state, as well as within being one of the most diverse school districts in Massachusetts, districts with the best teachers. So niche.com is actually a tool that a lot of parents use to select schools for their children. And what it does is it's looking at data, not just from reviews from parents, but also looking at data from the Department of Education and testing results. And this comes from 2020, and I did hear that there was a more recent data point that shows that the Chelmsford School District is actually decreasing in ranking, right? So I know that's something that the town can certainly work on. But you overall have a niche grade of A. Within that A score, there are different categories that show how you all compare with other kind of categories. A C for food and B for resources and facilities, really highlighting the fact that there is some improvements that need to be happening there in terms of the school's facilities. Now the AARP has something called a livability index. What it does is it looks at communities and how they compare to similar sized communities, right? So for the town of Chelmsford, your livability score is at 56. So I will say there isn't a community that has a perfect score of 100. The highest within your division or within your category is about a 72. And this is looking at the factors that determine livability, right? So things like housing. How affordable is housing, or is there accessible housing? Looking at neighborhood, how safe are the neighborhoods? And looking at transportation and access to different amenities and so forth. So you are at a score of 56, so that's in the upper half of communities in the United States. So again, another strength to boast about as well. With that, I'm gonna have Karen come up and she'll walk us through the rest of the slides here.
Can I just,
Yes.
because a lot of that data being from 2020, I feel like, especially because of COVID, things are like way different. So, I mean, I'm weary to have everyone said, oh yeah, that's the aging and this and price. I just feel like that's old, and that's old data.
Yeah.
It really is. So, I don't know, I'm frustrated that it's, and I know you got it from the census, but I feel like, I don't know, I thought it was something for the town, the town in some sort of their own census. I thought just a year ago I filled out. So I thought we had more of a town census. But
It doesn't ask that many questions of town census, really.
well, I know, but for the age especially, again, I'm younger age on the, I don't know, yeah. So that's just bad. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, we can look to update based on any town available data, but again, this is only happens every 10 years, right? So unfortunately, that's kind of what we have to rely on for now.
Yeah, I know the town does something like this.
All right, so I am going to walk quickly through a little bit of the structure of the town government so everybody understands how it's set up, and then some feedback we've heard already from the community. So first, as I think most of you all know, you have a town representative form of government with 5 select board members who hire a town manager, and the town manager is the one who's in charge of operating the city day to day. So police, fire, trash collection, those core services fall up under the town manager. From a budget standpoint, you'll see here the revenues, where the money comes from, where it goes. The biggest block there you'll see in the blue is property tax. Like most local governments in the United States, property tax are the primary source of revenue for you all here in Chelmsford. One thing I'll say about that, the good news from a town standpoint from planning, that's very stable revenue. Unlike sales tax or other forms, it doesn't tend to take recessionary hits. However, the challenge is as values rise, that creates a burden on people who own homes and the property taxes that they are individually paid. So that's one of the challenges with property tax. Other forms of revenue come from the state and then service charges. And then from an expenditure standpoint, not surprisingly, nearly half of the money goes back into the school system. The other big block you'll see there include public safety in purple, public works in kind of that dark bluish color, and then benefits and insurance is almost 20%. Local government is a people business. It takes people to provide the services, police officers, teachers, firefighters, public works employees, and then the associated costs with employing them. So that's not surprising at all to see that as well as a big chunk of the expenditures for the town.
Do you have a comparison of that to other surrounding towns of similar size?
I do not, but we can probably get that for you. Nothing in here really seemed out of whack at all relative to the expenditures. From a community endpoint today, we have worked on a couple of different ways to reach out to people. Number one are the interviews with community members that Charlene mentioned, and the other is the social pinpoint survey. So I'm curious, who in here, show of hands, has taken that survey, the social pinpoint one that's online?
Well, I did, but then I had to close instead of submit, so I lost my 20 minutes of time.
Okay, we'll retake it.
But I had a couple questions, are you gonna go over those questions? Because
Yeah,
the
yeah.
options, I was not, yeah, it
Okay.
seemed weird.
Yeah, we're about to go through that now. If you have not taken it, please do, and please have your neighbors take it. We'd like to see a better response rate. So we have some selected responses here that we'll share with you to give you a flavor of what we're hearing as part of this part of our analysis. But the first thing you see here, the question is, what are some of the things that the town government does well? And this is a check all that apply, and it's, you know, a rank order. So people said that the town does a good job maintaining outdoor spaces, parks, and trails, public safety, K-12 education, infrastructure, and then smart and efficient use of public funds. So that's something that they ranked highly that the town does from the social pinpoint standpoint. And then in the interviews that we provided, name a few things that the town government does well. Providing essential services was something folks said that the town is good at. Fiscal responsibility and management, we heard quite a bit about that in the interviews, that the town is well run financially and is in a strong fiscal position. And then that there's also collaborative and supportive town structure. So some of the things that the town government does well from those conversations that we started to have. So what are some of the things that the town could do better? Check all that by again. So town infrastructure, and meaning the streets, the walkways, bikes, government buildings, public safety, and schools. So all of the components that the town is in charge of funding that really help make the community a good place is one of the things. Yes, I see a question.
Just, there's no number, like, I'm just curious what this chart actually, I can see that things are relative to each other.
Yeah, they're
but
right, yeah.
Is there like a percentage that these are equivalent to?
No, and honestly, with 107 responses at this point, I'd like to see a higher end before we really started assigning percentages.
You're supposed to like rank
I
it.
just see the line.
Yeah, so like if it's the blue rank, that is by far, like that, the longer the line, the more people said that that's something that they could do better.
Yeah,
That's not
I
gonna
meant the vertical lines, I didn't know if those meant anything.
No.
But just, so I'm on the steering committee, and we had this discussion at our meeting last week about how we're just not ready to get to that level of detail because we're not through this community visioning
Yeah.
process, and then when the next time all of this is presented, there will be more detail.
Absolutely, and that gets to that response rate, right? We'd really like to see a higher response. Yes.
So are you saying that of the, adults in the town of like 30,000 people, we've only had 107 people respond?
Yes.
Wow.
So that's why take it. Encourage your friends and neighbors to take it. We need your help. Word of mouth does wonders with tools like this.
So I know it was like rank it in order, so being as longest line, is it just those are the people, what people chose, or that's the number of people that actually chose it first?
This is a check that applies, check all that applies. So this is the one that came up.
Oh, okay, so that was not a rank.
That's not a rank order question.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was selected the most times. K-12 education, affordable and accessible housing options, Ease and quality of public transportation is something people said the town could do better. And then engagement with communities and residents. That was a theme we started to hear in this data. Now, when we got to the interviews, name a few things that the town can do better. You'll see here communication and outreach, resource allocation, planning and strategic vision. So good news, you all are here. We've been having these forums. We're engaged in that process. Infrastructure, so some alignment with the interviews, with what we've seen in the early results from Social Pinpoint. Technology, transportation and accessibility. Town employee engagement and culture, so inside the town, how the employees work with one another. And then town identity, were some of the things that we heard that the town could do better. And then what do you foresee as Chelmsford's biggest challenges over the next 5 years? We asked that question, and what folks said were the high cost of living and housing affordability. So the conversation earlier about is affordable, or is it? It depends on who you ask. So that's a challenge people see coming. K-12 education, to the conversation about where are the schools now, where were they 5 years ago, what do the facilities look like? Ease and quality of transportation, and this means everything from bicycle, pedestrian infrastructure, streets, and also the public transportation. The availability of housing, not just housing affordability, but housing availability. And then environmental impact reduction, are things that folks named that they have questions or concerns about over the next 5 years. Yes, it looks like you're about to raise your hand.
Yes. Before you leave the chart, you have 107 responses out of 33,000
Yes.
residents.
Yes.
So I'm questioning, how does Chelmsford compare in terms of community engagement and participation? 107 versus 33,000. What are some of the other towns doing?
So I will say we just finished a project in Foley, Alabama, very similar sized community, and we had about 500 responses through this mechanism. So I would expect between 300 and 500 is pretty typical. Now remember, when we do this process, this is not the be all end all. We have the forums here, we have this input, we have the input from the employees, the conversations with community members, and all of that goes into the context setting that we do in the plan development sessions.
So you're expecting about 1% response rate from the population?
Yeah, all adults as well, right, considering 32,000 people.
Yeah.
And that's typical across the nation?
Like when you do a statistically valid survey, you're really looking for an N of about 600, depending on the demographic data, to get to something that's statistically valid. So yes.
Yeah, just as a comparison point, a few years ago, we were updating the master plan, and we did a townwide survey, an online survey, and I think we had well over 1,000 responses on that.
Yeah.
So it's not impractical to expect to get it. It's a matter of how do we get the word out to people to participate.
Exactly. So like I said, we could use your help. Exit here, encourage your friends and family to take the survey. Any other questions? Oh, yes.
So I was just, the school probably send the survey out. But this is where I was not sure how you rank preserving town character. So that question really kind of gave me the, what's going on here? That's why I'm here. So what does that mean? How do people answer that question? Preserving town character, as in what was the better, blending old and new. So how can you get any, because it's so subjective, and you have no idea where people are preserving which town character, whose town character, the ones that, been here for 50 years.
Consider town character
Yeah.
to be.
So, yeah, I don't know how you can put that on there.
Okay, so I would argue that the character, that's one data point, right? And preserving town character, what makes Chelmsford Chelmsford is how I would read that question, whether it's historic buildings, the walkability, the village atmosphere. That's the intent of the question.
Or like a small town feel as
Yeah.
well.
No, and I would
But
also
the
offer,
whole blending old and new, and
Yeah.
there is a vibe that some people don't want anything to change, and then there is change. So is
Yeah.
it my town character, where I see Chelmsford for being here for 7 years? Or is it the person who's been here for 70 years?
and the answer is it's all of that, right? That's part of the broad community engagement.
I
It's
don't know
all those
how you can
perspectives.
personally get information out of it, that's all.
Think about it as a way of rating the appetite for change.
Mhm.
But that's not saying that
To
there's, but
what
is there
extent
change, is
do
there change or
people
is
want
there
or
change?
not want change? Because that's really what
But-
that question is.
But you're not sure how people would interpret that, which is why the survey is only one way we're gathering information. We have these community forums. We've had, you've done interviews with some committees and individuals. There's that meeting in a box where groups can get together and discuss, so that data point on a single question in the survey is the only way we're getting information from people in town.
And then just a
There can be a
reminder.
deeper discussion on these other ways of gathering information, like this event.
Exactly, this is why we do this, right? So it's to get all those different input ways, and then all of that goes to the planning committee to do with what they decide is the best thing to do with it from a priority study, right? It is a piece of context to help with that strategic plan development that will then go back to the community for input. So I mean, it's a part of the process. Any other questions about this slide before we move on? All right, back to those interviews and the conversations that we had with folks. You'll see the categories at the bottoms from the concerns, and they are traffic and infrastructure, housing and development, economic and fiscal issues, and community engagement in the environment. So from the key concerns on the traffic and infrastructure standpoint, really that's about congestion, sewer and septic issues in the town, the water system, all of the things that go with some of the infrastructure challenges and aging facilities. Housing and development is issues there are the affordability of housing, development issues. What's the right development pattern for Chelmsford? What does the change mean? What does it look like? What is the right level of density? All of those concerns, kind of the conversation we've already started having in this space, was raised in those interviews. From an economic and fiscal issue standpoint, issues around increasing property taxes. You all saw that property taxes are the primary revenue source for the town, and there are service delivery needs, but the impact that has on the residents and the payer of those taxes is a concern. And then finally, community engagement in the environment. So this notion of there's a concern around a lack of civic engagement in the community that we heard in the interviews, the lack of response in the social pinpoint survey. So what does that mean, and how does the town help work through those? Those are some concerns that came up in those interviews. And then we had a question around ranking the following aspects that the town should prioritize in the strategic plan. So 1 is the most important. If you picked 1, this was the most important thing, and 15 was the least important. And there's a rank order where we did all of them. So number 1 that came out, because it had the largest line here, is the infrastructure issue, as far as focusing on the strategic plan. Then K-12 education, followed by the smart, efficient use of public funds. And then public safety, and then maintaining the outdoor spaces, parks, and trails. So really the core things and the core built environment and the core services, if you think about a town and what it focuses on, were ranked highly by the people who took the survey. And then finally, the last question we asked in the interviews is a really question about the vision. I like to call this the magic wand question. So if you have a magic wand, and you can wave it, what does Chelmsford look like 5 years from now? We're trying to really tease out, what do people like today? What do they want to preserve? What do they want to keep? And where do they see the future? So you'll see here the words that are largest are the ones that came up the most often. So engagement and vision and affordable and housing, services and accessible were some of the thematic words that started to bubble up to the surface as we've asked those questions. So we've had some conversation along the way related to the environmental scan. I'm curious, anything stand out to you? If you've learned anything new, anything do you think that is particularly important before we break up into small groups where you can continue the dialogue with one another?
Well, I would say that the few questions prior where it says that the town is lacking is their sidewalks and roads. Because to be honest, I mean, as far as potholes go, I think the town is great. You know, out there shoveling, having little things that shovel the sidewalks. I mean, that would be down the list. I think the town actually does a really good job, so that surprised me.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you for that. I saw you hang up there, Miss.
Yeah, from a demographic standpoint, I generally track most of what you're doing and then some. What I would love to see in your demographics is a comparison over time over the last 20 years, say, of the new investment in Chelmsford compared to other towns, other similar towns in the region.
Okay.
In other words, how are we doing in terms of attracting investment money into our community?
Okay, that's it. We'll make a note of that. Yes, ma'am.
it seemed like the things that people liked best about Chelmsford were also the things that people wanted everyone to work on.
Yes. Which, that struck me, right? Like, we love our schools, but gosh, we gotta keep focusing on the schools, right? Yeah.
Again, I would like some comparison of Chelmsford to other towns. But as much as I appreciate what's going on in Alabama, I kind of really am much more interested in what's going on in the eastern half of Massachusetts.
Okay. Yeah, we can get that data and that comparison. That came up last night too, as far as some of those statistics, wanting to see what other communities in this county look like.
Being an outsider, I have the opposite of that. Where I like to see what's happening outside of Massachusetts, because New Englanders tend to focus on the town and be in competition with neighboring towns, and don't look beyond that. I'm really interested in things outside of Massachusetts that work well here.
Other thoughts on the environmental scan before we get to our activity? Okay, so I'm going to flip to the next slide, and it's got a question prompt that you all are going to work together in small table groups. But Charlene, how many groups did you wish to shoot for?
This is 6.
6. So what we're going to do is there's 6 tables. We're going to break up into 6 groups. You're going to count off to get in your groups. So I don't know if you remember playing kickball as a kid, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to make the teams. But first, here's the question. So after we reorganize and separate, you will get with your table groups and you'll answer this question. In an ideal world, how do you think the town should look and feel 5 years from now? So you'll consider that question, you'll talk to your neighbors, and then you'll fill out sticky cards with your ideas, like that. And what we're looking for is 1 idea per card. So if it's historic preservation, put historic preservation on the thing. If it's safe streets, put safe streets. So write big so we can see it. And we'll work through that over the next 25, 30 minutes. But before you can we need to get into your groups. So we're going to start counting off, and I'm going to start with you, so you can be 1,
2,
3, 4,
5,
6,
7.
1. We're only doing 6, sorry. Yeah. Then it always happens that way. 1,
2,
3, 5,
6.
6. All right. And you're going to be 1,
1,
2.
3,
4, 6, and 1. All right. Y'all did so much better at that than we did last night. So let's start with, we'll do table 1 here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if you can reassemble. Much better. Light years All right, I'm hearing a lull in the conversation. So let's start doing our report out. I'm very curious to see what you all have been talking about at your tables. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call you up table by table. You'll take your cards. You'll fix them here, and your spokesperson will share with us what you all discussed. So I'm going to start, let's start with table 1 right here. Why don't you talk about that? Here. Thank you. All right, who's your spokesperson? All right, I love it.
no, that is not.
It's okay. All right, who's talking for you all?
Oh, no, that was the,
No, you gotta take that.
Oh, I gotta take that one down. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. I see.
Follow the rules.
All right. Everybody okay?
So I think there's a couple of these kind of all went together, but obviously age in place, the senior support in general for the aging programs. But then at the same time, I know people probably have realized that I've been the one to talk about this in the past, over on Facebook, Parks and Rec paid department to get more more programs for young families, because we want people to age in place, but we also want to draw in young families. And then, so we kind of and both and everything, and also diversity, everything kind of goes together. So, but then with that, the transportation, obviously again for seniors, but even like people will be able to bike around and walk around more. Like they're making all the sidewalks by Parker Middle School, which I think is a huge thing for kids to get to school, and even, I guess that was our, yeah.
All right, thank you. Let's give them a hand. Let's go with this orange table, table number 2.
Yes.
Sure.
And you can just put them on that paper, and then when that fills, we'll get the next one. Yeah.
We got really bogged down in talking about, and this is the same thing that happened the other day. Just talking about the level of engagement in town and how we'd really like, our vision would be to see stronger engagement, more people involved, civic involvement, hearing from more diverse community voices. And we just talked about, bigger societal things that may have led to volunteerism being so down, how the stay-at-home mentality is really hurt involvement. We'd like to see ways that the town could encourage more participation. So we then got to talk into community outreach and communication. So like part of our vision would include strong community outreach and communication. But we just have so much to say about engagement. We didn't even get to those other types of things.
Great. Well, thank you. All right, let's go to the dream team next. Let me make a space for you. All right. Do you have a spinning sheet?
Oh, no, actually, whoops.
I'll put that there, and then you can use this one,
Okay.
and I'll pick this one.
Because we talked a lot about aging in place and seniors. So I'm going to do aging in place and add it there.
I love it.
And then senior engagement in a digital age. We don't have a town newspaper anymore, so it's very difficult for anybody that's not on Facebook to actually know what's going on in town. Don't know how to solve that, it just exists. Let's see, we have less traffic on here yet.
We have transportation without cars, so they might be grouped together.
Okay, I'll put up less traffic here and we'll let the experts group things. And the usual more sidewalks. And then basically we talked about smart development in Chelmsford that benefits Chelmsford. Not having warehouses to have lots of trucks coming in to benefit people outside of Chelmsford for delivering things and degrading our environment, but having things developed that benefit the town itself. That'd be it.
That's great. All right, let's go to the table in the back, the next screen room.
Well, we talked a lot, but we didn't come up with a whole lot of ideas because the consensus at that table was we like it to be very similar to what it is today.
Yeah, the same.
Okay, so I added the but on the bottom and pushed the point. Hey, George? And we came up with better local transport, which I see as a topic that's shown up here. It's come up in the sidewalks, it shows up in the bikes, it shows up in the non-vehicle transport. Better local transportation was the biggest one that we came up with. The second one, of course, senior services. As I look around the room, I can understand why that might be. And we talked an awful lot about housing, but we got absolutely nowhere because while everybody would like to have a town that's just like the one we have now, where everybody can live in, it's kind of hard to do that without more housing at a reasonable point. But nobody wants the density. So no good answer to that yet.
I like that, yeah.
That's where we got.
Thank you. All right, we got Orange is next, table number 5.
All right, I got volunteered by the table to present this. We covered one really important and broad topic, housing. So none of you will be, the first topic was we all wanted to be here in 5 years, so that was important to know. Not surprisingly, with my friends over there, increase in housing stock, but it has to be done the right way, can't be done quote unquote repulsive. And I think the intent there is we need housing stock, but we need it done in a way to maintain that character, preserve the town, that sort of neighborhood type of vibe. So I think that's nobody's shocked by that theme. And the challenging part is how do we do that affordably, right? So we talked a lot about, everybody wants their housing to appreciate. You want to be able to sell your house so that you can move into your next thing. But if you can't afford to sell, or you can't get enough equity out of it, then how do we create affordable housing, right? So everybody needs to get the maximum, but if you're getting the maximum, you're not necessarily going to create affordability. I don't know how that problem gets solved either, like Mike said. And then aging in place, we saw it in the data. We know it from the folks in this room that there's a lot of aging in place going on. And that's going to create these multi-generational families. And I think aging in place can go, kind of two ways, right? So right now we have our younger generation that can't afford to live on their own or pay rent or anything like that. So those folks end up living with their families. So the question was, are we going to see that kind of flip right now where the older parents are taking care of older children? Are they going to kind of reverse those rules? That'll be interesting to see. So that comes to these multi-generational families. It's a way to age in place. It's a way to get housing stock available if people can downsize and move in. But in order to do that, resources are absolutely necessary as part of the strategic plan. So it's going to be things like elder care and transportation and support if you have people living with dementia. These are all things that we were able to talk about at our table. And I think, I didn't think about this, we've done a couple of these things, but this is a really important part of that plan. And I think aging in place can help solve a little bit of the problem. It's not all of it. So,
thank you. Good job.
So, for those who don't know me, I'm Joanne, and Donna and Scott and I came up with a few things that I don't think have yet been reflected. The first being, there needs to be, or we need to extend the depressed underground utilities to town center and Vinyl Square. It makes things, when there's a natural disaster like what we're seeing in the southern part of the country, would reduce any issues with us having our utilities, and it also improves the character and the look of the town. We have a beautiful town center in both in the center of Chelmsford itself and in North Chelmsford, and it's hard when you're looking around and looking at this beautiful historic town and looking at utility lines. Also, it would help improve the walkability of the town as well, I think, to have all of that area improved.
You're saying bury the line.
Bury the lines. And this has been discussed as part of infrastructure and accessibility to improve and add sidewalks in town. Everybody's talked about that before. That's an important topic. Accessibility and ADA compliance as a whole, to have a more robust system for addressing the needs of people with disabilities or mobility issues. So this falls under accessibility and infrastructure. For town government and boards, commissions, and committees to be in alignment and for there to be consistency, it seems as though sometimes you hear one thing over here and you hear another thing over here, and that just becomes confusing and I think frustrating. So as part of community engagement, this is an area where there would be some improvement. And also to improve communication, to have more options and proactivity, such as for the town website to be improved, maybe to include the opportunity to customize topics of interest, have a profile where you could do that so information is pushed out to you. An example being, you can't really check every upcoming agenda to see if there's something of interest that you should be participating in. And so then it's usually after the fact where people start to say, wait a minute, I didn't know that was happening down the road for me and I'm not interested. So, or I am interested and I have no way of making an impact. That's what we got.
Good job. So I think that's a wonderful point, because between running Cub Scouts and other things, I don't know how to get information out. Those people are on Facebook. And you guys, I just found out about this like 4 days ago, because it finally happened to show up on one of the Facebook pages. I was like, oh. So I had no idea this was even happening until like 4 days ago. I didn't know we were doing a small fun town strategic thing. So I love that idea.
Yeah. It's been a definite thing for sure.
Right, give yourself a round of applause. This is great ideas as you all can hear, probably as folks who are reporting out, there's lots of similarities, right, across what you all are wanting. I hear aging in place being a priority. I hear less traffic, congestion, transportation overall. I also hear affordability in housing or just the cost of living overall. So this is great, as I mentioned, all things that we'll be including as an input to our strategic planning sessions happening next month. Before we end, we always like to do a polling question just to see where you all are in terms of, are you optimistic or are you pessimistic about where the town would be in 5 years? So by show of hands, we'll start with the 5. So 5 is the most confident. So the question is on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the most confident, how confident are you that the town of Chelmsford will be even a better place to live 5 years from now? So again, who are my 5s? Just raise your hand. Okay, we've got a few 5s, very confident. What about a 4? Okay, who's in the middle? 3. Okay. Do we have any 1s or 2s? 2, okay. 1, 2. Any 1s? That's a good
That is,
one.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
a record.
that-
Once
yeah, that's
again, we
her,
oftentimes get at least a few 1s, so this is great. This means that you all are very optimistic, and again, right, as we're talking through all these things, ultimately I'm hoping that for those of you who are at a 2, that will increase, right, as we continue to go through this process. As far as next steps, we are still in the community visioning forum, so I saw some folks haven't had a chance to complete the survey online. Please feel free to do so after this meeting. Tell a friend to tell a friend, and again, we're looking to get those numbers as high as we can get them. That phase will end in,
Where do we find it?
next slide. Yeah, so that phase will be ending in about a couple weeks here, so we're still collecting feedback. Then we'll move on to phase 3, which is facilitating strategic planning session with the committee and then with staff to really start to develop the plan. As I mentioned earlier, that draft plan will come back to you as the community to review. We want to make sure that we're getting it right before it's finally adopted. And in the effort of making this a living document, phase 4 is implementation, so assisting the town through that process and advising them on how to implement the plan. Stay engaged. If you can take a QR code of this photo here, that will take you directly on our social pinpoint site, where you'll find a survey as well as an ID as well.
Can I add one suggestion to this?
Yes.
So I love the idea of the QR code, and I know your group in the town has done a super job, but you see this everywhere. There are, I think, there's more than one survey out there too, which can add a little bit of confusion, but on Facebook, I've seen, unless I'm wrong, just the QR code with the information without the inclusion of the short URL.
Okay.
So the short URL should always be included with the QR code, because if you're looking at your phone, you can't scan the QR code, right? So if you have the short URL, you can enter it in, on your computer or on your phone. So just just a suggestion there.
Charlie, is that the same as the Bisley one, that short URL?
It could be, I remember.
No, I'm just asking Charlie, is that
Oh,
the same
sorry.
location?
It should be, yeah, I'll have to double check. I think we might have changed it because folks are having some issues with the Bitly.
Okay.
Yeah, just a couple of times they weren't both there, and I thought, well, how can I see it?
That's a big issue, because if you're looking on Facebook and you see the QR code, you can't scan the
Oh, I
QR
just
code,
took that.
because you're holding your phone. looking at it.
That's
Exactly,
different.
yeah, yeah. Okay, this.
I will
It's too
say-
bad it can't be a live link.
After closing out my thing, and because of the little click and drag thing, it's like the kids on Chromebooks, do it on a computer, you can. It would be much quicker and much easier on a computer. I would stay off the phone on this one.
So just to close us off, thank you all for coming and really being involved and being engaged. As I mentioned, continue to spread the word, and if you have any additional questions, we'll stay on for a little bit if you want to come and chat, and hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you all.
Thank you, good job.